Hello, Prime Media audiences. This is your host, Ladette, here at the Russian Embassy. It's a special interview with Ambassador Yevhen Teregin. I'm very honored that he's able to give us a time today to briefly brief us on current events. Thank you for joining me, Ambassador. Thank you so much for giving us your time from your busy schedule today. I really appreciate it. Just want to start off straight to our discussion and ask you, in general, what do you want the world to know about Russia currently? What do you want to tell Ethiopia and the rest of the world?
First of all, I would like to thank journalists of Prime Media for visiting our embassy and for arranging this meeting. It's always a happiness to meet with the Ethiopian journalists whom we are always deemed to be our honest friends. And in regards to your question, let me try to formulate it a little bit in another way. I understand that you are trying to be gentle while asking in the way you have said, but of course it is clear that in these days all over the world Russia in the mouth of every people is connected to Ukraine and the situation in Ukraine, what is happening there. Let us try together to look at this situation and understand what is happening. Well, first of all, I would like to say that the special military operation which was undertaken and announced by Vladimir Putin under no means can be considered as a kind of aggression of Russia against Ukraine or a kind of war of Russia against Ukraine. All the steps were undertaken in accordance with the paragraph 7, Article 51 of the Charter of the United Nations. Besides that, these decisions were adopted by the Russian parliament. These decisions were also based agreements on friendship and cooperation between Russia and Donetsk and Lugansk self-proclaimed republics. The purpose of this operation is to protect people of these republics who have been subjected to mockery and genocide for 8 years by the Kiev regime that came to power in 2014 as a result of coup d'etat. So, as you may understand, the roots of this tragic situation have appeared not today or yesterday, but more practically 8 years ago. And for 8 years, these people were tortured, were killed by the ultra-nationalists and their forces, which took power in Kiev, the capital city of Ukraine. These genocide criminal acts were affected not only against local people, but as well against the citizens of the Russian Federation, whom we had to defend. 4 million people, lives of 4 million people of these regions were under day-to-day threat and under day-to-day threat of being killed, being tortured, being robbed. And there is a natural question: how long should we have tolerate this situation? Why the whole world is keeping silence about what is happening in Ukraine? Why the so-called defenders of democracy, as we call it, are keeping deaf ear and blind eye on the situation in Ukraine? Where is the Security Council of the United Nations? who is keeping silence about this situation. And why are we so crazy now when we took measures to protect millions of people who fell under the threat of extermination? Let us remember 1983, when the US occupied Grenada, saying that we have to protect American citizens in this tiny island. There were less than 2,000 of Americans in this, on this tiny island at that time. And this was enough for the whole might of the United States to occupy it. And now when we are not occupying, when we are helping people to protect themselves, there is such a shout and cry out. And of course, the aim of this operation under no condition is to occupy Ukraine. Of course not. We are just trying to, first of all, to protect the people in Donetsk and Lugansk districts or regions, to protect from the threat. We are helping the Ukrainian people itself, who is ruled by a handful of ultranationalists who are reviving traditions, West traditions of Nazis and fascists in their own country, in the middle of Europe.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. It sounds like, you know, the mainstream media, I'm not sure if it's representing, you know, the story. I mean, just recently, Ethiopia has had issues with the mainstream media, how they were portraying the issues that Ethiopia has had in the past year. How do you see the current Russian situation portrayed in the mainstream media?
It seems that mainstream media, which is sometimes called the fourth branch of power, is using this power not for the best, but for evil. And all these tricks which are now initiated or practiced by mainstream are very well known to us. Quite a simple example. Remember the situation in Addis Ababa at the end of November, beginning of December last year?
Yes.
How many shouts, panic shouts were, well, evacuate, leave the city. The city is surrounded by insurgents. Tomorrow they will be in the city. Just the same shout was heard a couple of weeks ago from the same mainstream media, but now applied to the situation in Ukraine. It seems that somebody who is behind is trying to just manipulate the situation. And mainstream becomes one of the main instruments of this manipulation. But what is worse, while trying to cheat the people, they also try not to let our mass media outlets to bring truth, to present truth to the people and to the world. Now they are trying to suppress, for instance, Russian mass media. They are prohibiting functioning of Russia Today. They are blocking Russian channels. They are blocking Russian bloggers and so on and so forth every day, on the one hand. On the other hand, just in 3 days or 4 days after the beginning of operation, we have counted, within this short period of time, we have counted at least 1,200,000 fakes disseminated all over the world about this operation. We can see in
You
the
mean fake information?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We can see, for instance, a blow up of some multi-story building. Say, oh, this is bombing of Kiev. But if we look more precisely, we can see that this film was shot 7 years ago in another country. It was just an accident. And all the same, every day, every minute. I can open now TikTok and show, for instance, showing, look, burnt down column of Russian military technique, mechanized detachment. But I see that none of these mechanized vehicles have ever been used by Russian army. They are not used in our country. They are Western made.
And then there's a lot of information on the mainstream media as if civilians are being targeted. Is that something that's happening?
First of all, the Russian army does not use its might against civilian population. All the strikes which were affected were aimed against military objects. Even let us remember yesterday there was some film allegedly blowing up of TV tower in Kiev. But it was shot in this way to show as if it was shot. But it was not the tower which was shot, but a building near it where the center of disseminating of false propaganda was located. The tower is standing. This is one example. Another example is that, for instance, the fate of foreigners who are blocked now in the territory of Ukraine, especially in Kharkov city. There is a lot of students, especially from India, who are appealing, please let us, help us, let us be saved. But they are blocked by these nationalist detachments who are using them like a human shield, not permitting them to leave the city. So, of course, war is war. Any accident can happen, unfortunately. But it has never been practiced by the Russian army to intentionally strike civil objects. And vice versa, there are a lot of examples when these provocations are arranged by nationalist detachments, which are not subordinate even to the Ukrainian government, to the present Ukrainian government. Even the famous film about the blow of a missile rocket on the main square of Kharkov. Analysis of this blow shows that this rocket has arrived from northwestern direction to this place, which is where there are no Russian forces. It is one more example of the criminal character of those who are trying now to present Russia army as occupiers or something of that kind, occupants.
So there are some meetings for negotiations, and what is that looking like? What would be the win-win solution both for Russia and Ukraine, so that?
Well, we have called Kiev to solve our differences by negotiations on many occasions. Unfortunately, there was a deaf ear or ignorance from the other side. Finally, only after this operation, has started, it came something to their head, to their understanding that they have to negotiate. I believe, of course, this negotiation will not be easy. Too many contradictions, really. But in any case, it is necessary to conduct negotiation. It will be ups and downs, no doubt, but the two sides have no other way but to negotiate the solution. Of course, if the other side has such a wish. But our principle was formulated by a famous Russian and Soviet diplomat, former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Soviet Union, Andrei Gromyko, who has said on one occasion, better 10 years of negotiation than 1 day of war.
Well, we hope that the negotiations will continue and that some fruitful resolution is going to come out of the discussions. There's a lot of talks in the world, especially in regards to Africans, and the black community all over the world is pretty frustrated about the videos that victims are putting out, because people are fleeing, refugees, or trying to go to the border to leave Ukraine, and we've seen a lot of shot videos by citizens, African citizens particularly, being stopped from entering into the border, allowing Ukrainians to be first, or a different race to be first, and for them to be last. This has really frustrated the black community, and we've also seen that with Indians as well. You know, what is your thoughts on that?
Well, what you have mentioned, it is really inconceivable that in Europe, which calls itself a bastion of democracy, civilization, equality, and tolerance, such events are taking place. This once again confirms the duplicity and hypocrisy of certain Western politicians and governments. While proclaiming their adherence to democracy, they're closing their eyes when such situation happens. And this is just another manifestation of their double standards. What we could see just a couple of days, what was happening on the Ukrainian-Polish border, it's not, as I understand it, it's not just a violation of human rights, but it is simply a blatant racism, nothing more. What can I say? Well, so it is really incredible.
What do you expect from, you know, countries around the world? I mean, just different countries go through different challenges at times, and what do you, you know, what would you like from countries around the world? What do you expect?
Very complicated and very vast question, really. First of all, let us understand what is now, let us try to better and in deep understand what is now happening in Ukraine now. It's not Russian aggression. It's not Russian occupation. And although we officially call it special military operation, I can express my personal opinion that the situation is going even beyond this formula, because actually it is a manifestation of war of West against Russia. manifestation of Western aggression against Russia, in which Ukraine is and the Ukrainian government is used by Westerners just like puppets, like pawns. For 8 years, the Western powers were developing the military infrastructure in the territory of Ukraine. They were moving NATO infrastructure through Ukrainian territory towards Russian borders. And the closest border, Ukrainian-Russian border, is only 300-400 kilometers from Moscow. How should we have consider such actions? It was, as we call it, crawling aggression and crawling occupation by the west of Ukraine. This should have been stopped. We have addressed Westerners a lot of times, no reply. We have described our position in the Security Council. Zero result. We, at the last Munich conference, we were speaking about genocide of Lugansk and Donetsk region population by Ukrainian ultranationalists. What was the reply? Ha ha ha, said the Chancellor of Germany. The West has crossed red lines on many occasions. Now, let them understand that everything has its own end. The Western world presently, while rejecting fundamental ideas and principles of the United Nations and the United Nations Charter, is trying to make all the rest world to live on the basis of invented by the West so-called rules-based self-produced rules, which they can change as they like. But it's not a fair game. We had to defend our own sovereignty and our security. For us, the situation in Ukraine finally became the situation of life and death. It was the situation where we had to decide whether we submit our sovereignty to the West or whether we will live as we like. So the time has come, the bell has rung.
Yeah. Do you think countries are pressured and I remember Ethiopia was going through many sanctions and UN Security Council meetings and so forth. For the audience that do not understand how countries vote to these kind of things, do you think Western countries pressure other countries to have favorable vote towards their agenda?
Well, so what we're expecting from other countries? There is such a saying, to catch fish in dirty waters. There are many so-called politicians who are trying to do this. And under the present situation, they're trying to capitalize the political dividends in their own interests, using this tragedy which is now in Ukraine. Just pass by certain Western embassies on our road, in some other places in the city, and you will see Ukrainian flags in their territories. I don't know whether the Ukrainians have occupied them or whether they brought occupied Ukrainians to the place. It's up to them to decide, but nonsense. It's not a manifestation of solidarity, it's a manifestation of hypocrisy. They first pushed Ukrainian government to this conflict, and now they're trying, so saying, to protect it, although they are not going to participate directly. They like to do everything with other people's hands. So what we expect from other countries, please, don't interfere, first of all. We will decide our own problems ourselves. And of course, I would like to thank our genuine friends, and I believe that they are genuine friends not only of Russia but of Ukraine as well. And Ethiopia is among these genuine friends. For your support, for your solidarity, for your empathy. We understand your problems, you understand our problems. So by joining our efforts, we shall overcome any problem, any trouble.
Thank you so much, Ambassador.
Pleasure was,
yes.
It was a pleasure to see you.
Prime Media audiences, this was my time with the Russian ambassador. I'll join you next time with another guest. Thank you.